Davin Crowley-Sweet, and I'm the Chief Data Officer and Director of our Digital Lab for National Highways. Prior to my career in road, I was in the rail sector, and I'd been in the railway for 15 years, and my last job in the railway was as one of the professional heads, working for our chief engineer, and I was the professional head for all of our railway system data. But I started my career in rail in Orange as a young man when I was about 23 years old through Carillion back then. And then I joined into Network Rail when it merged. And I joined in Stonebridge Park Depot in the maintenance team, and I was mainly responsible for the planning of signalling and telecoms work. But I didn't have a background in education. I didn't go to university. I didn't finish college. And my actual background was music, believe it or not. And I was a professional musician in a heavy metal band where I played guitars. I think the biggest challenge I faced in my career, and it's changed. If you ask a younger version of me, the biggest challenge was everyone else. It was going against competition for jobs with people who had a degree or people who had a background that I didn't have. And everyone else was the problem when I was younger. And the older that I've got, the realization has been the biggest challenge that I face is the perspective I take of a situation. And I can choose to see a situation negatively, or I can choose to see a situation positively. And, I wake up with imposter syndrome, or you wake up thinking the world's against you. Well, actually, they're just fears that I've held. They're assumptions that I've made, and it's a perspective I've chosen to take. And I think the biggest challenge that I faced in the industry, the transport sector, rail or road, has been, really challenging myself to understand why I am afraid, or why I feel different, or why things are the way they were, and then realise that it stems from a lack of confidence as opposed to something external that's sitting in the domain that stops me from doing something. So I've definitely over time become more confident in myself, and realised that you don't need to be perfect, and it's actually around being authentic is really important, I think, and understanding that and being honest about where you are vulnerable, and building the teams around you to help you manage those vulnerabilities and offset where you're strong and where you're weak, and create the leaders around you. And I think that's where my thinking has started from, that the problem is everything else outside me, to actually the problem is the perspective I take of situations. Race, ethnicity, they're really important, and I don't think people realise the dimension people can bring if you see a problem differently. So my wife is, although she's born in Japan, she's ethnically South Korean, and we've been married for like 17 years, and we see things so differently. And translation, I never realised what lost in translation meant until I got married. And an example is my wife, there's this famous picture, and it's a picture of a fish, and then behind one fish is a group of fish. And if you show that picture to people from Japan and say, what does it mean? They see it as the group of fish chasing away the outcast. And if you show that same picture to a group of people from the West, they say, here's the fish at the front that's leading the other fish. And it just goes to show that different ethnicities, different cultures, different backgrounds see things in completely different ways that you would never see. So, when you're trying to solve problems, you get, people who think in the box, and then you get people who think out the box, and then you get people who don't have any concept of the box. And the more people you involve from more different backgrounds, the more dimensions you bring to solving problems. So you're not just left with people who think in the box or people who think outside the box. You get people who can reimagine a completely different world because they had no concept of the box to begin with. And I think we need to start recognizing that we are more than just the sum of the education or the college that we went to or the university that we went to. We are a sum of all of our past experiences, our culture and our backgrounds, and that's what we're bringing to work. So with diversity and inclusion really comes authenticity and bringing your true self to work. And a story that really rings true to me, and it was one from the rail industry actually, and I'll try not to give too much detail away, but one of the best project managers that I ever worked with, She's just absolutely awesome at everything she did. Her people skills, her management skills, her logistics skills. Any situation she could keep calm, any difficult stakeholder she could manage. You give her a project plan and she could absolutely crush it and deliver on time perfectly every time, and not just in a belligerent hard way, in a way that brought people with them. And if you get to know this person and understand where their strengths come from, it's got nothing to do with their college that they went to. It's got nothing to do with the university they went to. It's in their home life and in their personal life. They're a carer. They're a carer for their partner's father who was ill, their partner's brother who suffers from a life-changing condition. And this person has picked up all of those resilience skills and all of those program management skills from her life experience and her background, not her university degrees in college. And I think that's where I pray for the day where someone has the courage to send me a CV of for a job I might be advertised, and then talk about their personal life on it, not just about the code they can write or the university they went to. Their life experiences that really shaped them, molded them, and gave them the unique perspective that they have. Because that's what we need, is we need people with a unique perspective to solve big problems, because it's the thinking that we have today that has caused the situation we're in today. So we're going to need different thinking to get out of it. You could easily cast some sweeping statements around women are like this and men like this, and I think we've got to see it less than that. I mean, if I step back from it and just look at the numbers for a second, 50% of our population is female. You would expect 50% of the population of our leadership teams to be female. And if they're not, you've got to ask yourself why they're not. And is it a bias in how we recruit, the subconscious, etc.? Or is it because women are, through whatever reasons, preferring to choose different careers? And if that's the case, why is that the case, and how do we get to the model for that? So I think it's too simple to say, women are like this and therefore they bring this skill. But I think we just got to look at it at kind of a numbers game and say 50% of our population is female, and why aren't they represented in leadership positions of organisations, and what's causing that, and really get into the bottom of what's causing it. Is it the social pressures to have families and to have children and be stay-at-home mums? Is it the difficulties of, I want to be an executive director, but you can't do that role part-time, and how do I look after my family if that's the case? And I think we need to look at those issues surrounding why they're not there, as opposed to, I think the fact that people bring something to a leadership position, man, woman, if they're suitable for the job, they're suitable for the job. But I think we need to look at why they're not there to begin with, and really get into the details of it. Because I think everyone brings something to the party, male, female, whatever ethnicity, social class, background you're from. And if we look at our board positions to today, they don't represent the wealth of culture and experience that our country has. I think we're doing all the things you'd expect a large corporation to do around the active campaigning, recruiting, and just the general culture. But what I'd say is the really refreshing and rewarding things around National Highways is the leadership structure and thinking, and its openness to do this. I feel that I can walk up to my CEO if I see him walk by and have a casual conversation and talk about these things, and I would have an honest, authentic conversation back. And I think, if the main thing Highways or National Highways has got right is that right from the top, the leadership culture, which creates the environment to be able to have the conversations where real people can have real conversations about real stuff, and difficult conversations around gender, around ethnicity, around, have we got enough representation from local communities in our workforce in the different parts of the country where we operate. And I think that's been the best thing that I've seen, and that kind of leadership style ripples through. It starts at the top and it gradually gets down through, and it gets down, and it just becomes part of the way you work there. And that's what I've seen happen in the 4 years that I've been there. It's not unusual to have a conversation like we're having today with people around what do we need to do differently. I think women, men, everyone has a place in science and engineering. And if you look at what science and engineering is, it's really the art of problem solving in methodical ways. And I think the way to solve a problem is not surround yourself with 10 people who think identically. As I mentioned before, my background is in music. When you write a song, there's an analogy between writing a song and solving a problem. What you don't do is get 5 musicians who are absolutely identical, who think the same, speak the same instrument, rehearse and play the same way, and put them in a room and then hope you get a fantastic song. You simply don't do that. And it's, creating a song is around finding 5 different people who all think differently, who all play different instruments in a different way, and recognizing you might all be playing different notes and you might all be playing notes differently, but actually what's important is that you're contributing to the song at the end. And I think of that in the same way as the workplace. And when people talk about diversity, for me, what's really important is the cognitive diversity, the fact that we have different people from different preferences, backgrounds, races, upbringings, classes, social, whatever they may, and surround yourself with all the different people who create all the different dimensions and perspectives of a problem, to solve them together. And if you just have one group of people solving problems, you will miss 99% of the solutions that are available, purely because you've not surrounded yourself with the creative tension that's required to actually get past thorny problems. There's that expression that says, treat people how you want to be treated. I'm going to say something contentious. I don't agree with that situation or that sentence. And I think it should be treat people how they want to be treated. And I've got to recognise that how I want to be treated is not the same as how other people want to be treated. And that other people from, can I fully understand how women feel? No, because I'm male and I see the world through my male lens. And that's really important for me. Do I really understand what it's like to be an ethnic minority? No, I don't, because I'm not. And I've seen the world through a lens of a British white person. And recognizing that my perspective of the world is through my lens. And when I create the environment for people to be successful in, I've got to really recognize that that's my job as a leader, create the environment so others can be successful. And when I create that environment, it can't be about creating the environment that was suitable for me, because that will just grow more leaders that are like me. I've really got to think about, how do I create the environment where others can be successful who are not from the background or position that I was in, or gender that I am. And how do I better understand, by talking to people like yourself, what is the things I can do to create the environment where other people can be successful? And it's the little things that matter. It's a conversation with someone that explores their culture, really understands it. How do you see the world? Like that example I gave earlier with the fish and my wife being from Japan, she sees the world in a completely different way. And that makes me think about, we often use the English language to communicate, but depending on where you're from and who you are, you will have a different interpretation of what those words mean. And for me, one of the things I focused on is, how can I be very clear on my language, very clear on the words I use, and then how can I use that to create the environment where everyone can be successful, recognizing I can't create that environment from the perspective of what's the environment that I needed to be successful, because I come from one specific place, and what's the environment everyone needs to be successful. I think women do get well respected in the work they do. I think the question is there enough women doing it? I mean, I personally know, and I was mentored by women, and they so I certainly have respect, and I certainly see them. But I think social media is where we get a lot of our news from, and the dangers with social media is they're built around echo chambers that you search for, you see what you search for, and I wonder if people aren't searching for female leaders, female entrepreneurs, people who have added to this thing, they simply won't see them on some of the technology platforms that we use. I think it will improve it. And the reason being is, could you imagine a world where people work from home exclusively before COVID? And the answer was no. Everyone thought it's about presenteeism. You've got to be in the office. And there was probably thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people across the UK who would turn up to the office and not be that productive, but they needed to be at the office because the rules say you've got to be at the office. And I think home working has done two things. It's shown that, you can live in an area that's close to your kids' school, but still work remotely from far away. So you don't need to be in a city. You don't need to pay extortionate prices for properties when you can live elsewhere and work elsewhere. And I think the big one really is that we've seen an introduction to families' lives. There wouldn't be a meeting. It wasn't unusual in meetings where your kid walked into the room, or your partner walked into the room, or something like that, or someone walked into the room. And I think we got to know each other at a personal level. And the world has woken up to people as people, and they're not just employees. And yes. I think people are much more forgiving around, you've got a family life, so how about you work around your family rather than try to fit your family around your work? And I think that's a massive game changer, especially for women who society largely expects and depends upon them to be the mum, look after the kids, do the school run, where now it's a case of, if I'm working at home, I can do the school run. Yes. I can fit my work around that kind of thing. And people have seen my kids, they've seen my family, and they know the kinds of things I'm dealing with that. And it just feels that people are a bit more forgiving and empathetic and open to different ways of working that put the family at the centre and then build the work around the family, as opposed to, ignoring the family and just trying to view people as an employee. You've got your task and that's what we care about. And now I think it's brought personal life and professional life together in a way that didn't exist before. Follow your heart. You will invariably come across situations in your life where you start to doubt yourself, and recognize those doubts or fears about the future. And the future hasn't happened yet, and you get to choose and define your own future. Acknowledge those thoughts, learn to turn the volume down on them, and try to turn up the volume on the other side of your shoulder about that voice that says, what are you going to do differently? How are you going to be successful? How are you going to own your future? Because you will always be confronted with doubts. You will always imagine a future, and it's the nature of humans to imagine the worst case scenario than the best case scenario. The fact that you're having those thoughts means you're human, and that's a good thing, but try to turn the volume down on them, ignore them a bit, recognize them what they are, they're doubts, it's ego, it's part of your psyche, and turn up that voice in your head that says, what about when I'm successful?